Clara had always been a fighter. A single mother in her early 30s, she worked tirelessly to provide for her 6-year-old daughter, Lily. Every morning, she left their small, one-bedroom apartment before sunrise, heading to her first job at a diner. By noon, she was already on her way to her second job as a grocery store cashier, where she stayed until late evening. Despite her long hours and exhaustion, Clara never complained. Not to her neighbors, not even to herself. She focused on one thing: giving Lily a better life. Their budget was razor-thin. Clara often skipped meals or ate leftovers from the diner so there would be enough food for Lily. Still, every night after work, Clara walked home through the park, a shortcut that saved her precious minutes. It was during these walks that she first noticed him. Eli, a homeless man who sat quietly on a bench near the fountain. His clothes were worn, his face weathered by years of hardship, but his eyes held a quiet dignity. At first, Clara simply nodded as she passed him, too preoccupied with her own struggles to do more. But one chilly autumn evening, something shifted. As she unwrapped the sandwich she'd brought for dinner, she caught Eli glancing at it hungrily. Without hesitation, Clara approached him. "Here," she said softly, holding out half of her sandwich. "It's not much, but it's fresh." Eli hesitated, clearly unused to such kindness. Finally, he accepted it with a quiet thank you. From that day forward, Clara made it a point to share whatever little she could spare. Sometimes just a piece of fruit, other times a warm cup of coffee she picked up on her way home. Lily noticed her mother's actions and once asked, "Mommy, why do you give him your food when we barely have enough?" Clara smiled gently, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "Because everyone deserves a little kindness, sweetheart. And if I can help someone, no matter how small, then I should." Clara didn't know it yet, but her simple acts of compassion would ripple far beyond those quiet evenings in the park, and change both her life and Eli's forever. Over time, Clara and Eli developed a quiet but meaningful connection. Their interactions were brief, often just a few exchanged words, but they carried a weight that neither of them fully acknowledged at first. Every evening, as Clara walked through the park after her shift, she'd stop by Eli's bench. Sometimes she brought him leftover soup from the diner, other times a piece of bread or an apple. No matter what it was, Eli accepted it with gratitude, his weathered face softening into a rare smile. Eli wasn't used to kindness, not anymore. Life on the streets had hardened him, teaching him to expect indifference or even cruelty from strangers. But Clara was different. She didn't ask questions or judge him. She simply gave without expecting anything in return. That kind of selflessness felt foreign yet deeply comforting to Eli. One particularly cold winter evening, Clara arrived at the park bundled in her threadbare coat, holding 2 steaming cups of coffee she'd managed to save from work. "Here," she said, handing one to Eli. "It's freezing tonight." Eli hesitated before taking it, his hands trembling slightly from the cold. "You didn't have to do this," he murmured, his voice rough but sincere. "You barely have enough for yourself." Clara shrugged, trying to lighten the mood. "Well, sharing keeps me warm too." Then, more seriously, she added, "Besides, everyone deserves a little warmth, even if it's just a cup of coffee." That moment stuck with Eli. For the first time in years, someone saw him not as a burden or a shadow on society, but as a human being worthy of care. It reminded him of who he used to be, a man with dreams, hopes, and people who cared about him. He began looking forward to Clara's visits, finding comfort in the routine of their exchanges. Lily, now 8 years old, started joining Clara on some evenings. She'd chatter excitedly about school or share stories about her day, bringing a spark of joy to the otherwise quiet park. Eli listened intently, occasionally offering a comment or nodding along. Over time, he grew fond of the little girl, seeing glimpses of her mother's kindness in her bright eyes. "Your mom's a good person," Eli told Lily one evening when Clara stepped away to check her phone. "Don't ever forget that." Lily grinned proudly. "I know. She's the best." Despite their growing bond, Clara never asked about Eli's past, and he never offered. Some wounds ran too deep to put into words. Still, Eli often found himself wondering about Clara's life. How did she manage to stay so strong despite her struggles? Where did she find the courage to keep giving when she had so little? Then, one spring morning, Eli vanished. The bench where he usually sat remained empty, and Clara couldn't shake the unease settling in her chest. Had something happened to him? Or had he simply moved on? She tried not to dwell on it, focusing instead on the challenges of daily life. Yet, part of her missed the quiet companionship they'd shared. Little did Clara know, Eli hadn't forgotten her, or the countless acts of kindness she'd shown him. In fact, those moments would soon become the foundation for a life-changing turn of events. Years passed, and Clara barely gave Eli another thought beyond occasional fleeting memories of their evenings in the park. Life moved forward, though it didn't get much easier. Now working longer hours than ever, Clara struggled to keep up with mounting bills while ensuring Lily had everything she needed for school and extracurricular activities. The cozy bond they'd once shared seemed like a distant chapter in her life, something warm and comforting, but ultimately out of reach. Meanwhile, Eli's disappearance wasn't as simple as Clara imagined. After leaving the park that spring morning, he'd wandered aimlessly, eventually landing in a shelter on the outskirts of town. There, he began piecing his life back together, taking odd jobs and slowly regaining a sense of purpose. Though he never forgot Clara's kindness, survival consumed most of his energy. That is, until an unexpected letter arrived one crisp autumn afternoon. A letter that would change everything. The envelope bore the seal of a law firm, its contents formal yet startling. Eli sat on the edge of his cot in the shelter, hands trembling as he read the words inside. A distant relative he barely remembered had passed away, leaving behind a substantial fortune, and naming Eli as the sole heir. At first, disbelief washed over him. How could someone like him, an outcast, a man who'd spent years invisible to the world, inherit such wealth? But the documents were undeniable. He was now wealthy beyond his wildest dreams. For days, Eli wrestled with conflicting emotions. Guilt gnawed at him. He felt undeserving of this windfall after so many years of hardship. Yet, amidst the turmoil, a single thought anchored him. Clara. Her face appeared in his mind every time doubt crept in. The way she smiled despite her exhaustion, the warmth in her voice when she spoke to him, the sacrifices she made without hesitation. She had given him hope when he had none, and now, finally, he had the means to repay her. Determined to find her, Eli hired a private investigator to track down Clara. It didn't take long. Her name wasn't uncommon, but her description matched perfectly. The kind woman walking through the park each evening, the mother raising a daughter alone. When Eli learned she still lived in the same neighborhood, struggling just as she had been all those years ago, his resolve hardened. This was his chance to make things right. Not just for Clara, but for himself. Eli began secretly observing Clara from afar. Disguised in new clothes and driving a modest car, he parked near her apartment complex or followed her during her commute. What he saw broke his heart. Clara looked older, wearier. Her shoulders weighed down by years of relentless work. She no longer walked with the same bounce in her step, and the spark in her eyes seemed dimmed by exhaustion. Even Lily, now a teenager, carried herself with a maturity far beyond her years, likely forced into responsibility too soon. One evening, Eli watched as Clara returned home after a double shift. Through the window, he saw her collapse onto the couch, clutching her side. For a moment, she simply sat there, staring blankly at the wall. Then, summoning what little energy she had left, she opened a stack of overdue bills and sighed deeply. Eli clenched his fists, anger mixing with sadness. How could someone so selfless be treated so unfairly by life? That night, Eli made his decision. He wouldn't just repay Clara's kindness. He'd transform her life completely. Using his newfound resources, he devised a plan to lift the burdens she'd carried for far too long. First, he anonymously paid off her debts, clearing every bill that had haunted her sleepless nights. Next, he purchased a small house in a safe neighborhood, ensuring she and Lily would have a stable place to call home. Finally, He set up a trust fund for Lily's education, guaranteeing her future opportunities Clara could only dream of providing. Each act was deliberate, thoughtful, a reflection of the gratitude Eli carried in his heart. As he signed the final document, tears streamed down his face. For the first time in years, he felt peace, not because of the money, but because he'd found a way to honor the woman who saved him in more ways than she'd ever know. Little did Clara realize, her quiet acts of compassion were about to come full circle, bringing light back into her darkest days. Clara's life had become a delicate balancing act, juggling work, parenting, and mounting financial stress with little room for error. So when strange things began happening, she assumed it was either a mistake or some bizarre twist of fate. The first sign came in the form of an email from her bank. "Your account has been credited." Confused, Clara logged in to check her balance. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw that all her overdue bills had been paid in full. "What on earth?" she muttered, staring at the screen. She called the bank immediately, convinced there must be an error. But the representative assured her the payments were legitimate, made by an anonymous donor who wished to remain unnamed. Overwhelmed and suspicious, Clara tried to dismiss it as a fluke. Yet, just days later, another surprise arrived. This time, it was a real estate agent knocking on her door. "Miss Clara," the woman said brightly, holding out a folder. "You've been pre-approved for ownership of this property." Clara blinked, looking past the agent to see a cozy house across the street, the very one she'd often admired during her walks home. "I don't understand," Clara stammered. "I didn't apply for anything. It's already taken care of," the agent explained. "All you need to do is sign here." Still reeling, Clara hesitated. Something about this felt surreal, almost too good to be true. Who could possibly afford such generosity? And why would they choose her? The final piece of the puzzle fell into place a week later when Lily came running into the kitchen, waving an envelope. "Mom, there's something for us." Inside was a letter addressed to both of them. "Dear Clara and Lily, I hope this gift finds you well. You may not remember me. I'm the man you once shared meals with in the park. Your kindness changed my life when I needed it most, and now I want to do the same for you. Please accept these gestures as tokens of gratitude. My only wish is that you continue to spread the same compassion that defines you. With deepest thanks, a friend." Tears streamed down Clara's face as she read the note aloud to Lily. It was Eli. He hadn't forgotten her after all, and he'd repaid her kindness in ways she couldn't have imagined. Determined to thank him personally, Clara reached out through the contact information provided by the real estate agent. A few days later, Eli arrived at their new home, looking healthier and more confident than Clara remembered. When she opened the door, she froze, unsure what to say. Finally, she managed a shaky smile. "Eli," he nodded, his own eyes glistening. "It's me, Clara. I wanted to explain everything." They sat together in the living room, surrounded by moving boxes and the faint scent of fresh paint. Eli recounted his journey, the years of struggle, the unexpected inheritance, and his decision to find her. "You gave me so much more than food," he said softly. "You reminded me that people can still care, even when the world feels cold. I couldn't let that go unrewarded." Clara shook her head, tears streaming freely. "But I didn't do any of it expecting this. I just wanted to help. And that's exactly why you deserved it," Eli replied firmly. "Not everyone would share their last bite of bread, Clara. You're extraordinary." Lily joined them, hugging Eli tightly. "Thank you for helping Mommy," she whispered, "and for believing in us." For hours, they talked, laughed, and cried, filling the gaps left by years apart. By the end of the visit, Clara realized this wasn't just about repayment. It was about connection, gratitude, and the ripple effects of kindness. As Eli prepared to leave, Clara stopped him at the door. "Promise me one thing," she said earnestly. "Don't disappear again. You're family now." Eli smiled, nodding. "I promise." In the weeks that followed, Clara and Lily settled into their new home, surrounded by warmth and security for the first time in years. The weight of financial struggles lifted, Clara found herself able to focus on what truly mattered: raising Lily with love and instilling values of compassion and resilience. One evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset, Lily turned to her mother. "Mom, do you think we'll ever get to help someone the way Eli helped us?" Clara smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "We already are, sweetheart. Every time we show kindness, even if it's just sharing a smile or lending a hand, we're making the world a little brighter." She paused, reflecting on her own journey. You know, life has a funny way of coming full circle. What goes around really does come around. That's why it's so important to give freely, without expecting anything in return. Lily nodded thoughtfully. "Like how you gave food to Eli, even when we didn't have much." "Exactly," Clara replied. "And look where it led us." Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest ripples. As the sky blushed pink and orange, Clara felt a deep sense of peace. Her simple gestures had changed not only Eli's life but also her own. And now, through him, she'd been given a second chance at happiness. It was proof that goodness always finds its way back, often in ways beyond imagination. Together, Clara and Lily vowed to keep paying it forward, knowing their actions could inspire others just as Eli had inspired them. In the end, kindness wasn't just an act, it was a legacy. Thanks for taking the time to read/watch this story. If you enjoyed it and want to see more heartwarming, inspiring, and emotional stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Your support means the world to me, and it helps me create more content that brings joy, hope, and inspiration to your day. Plus, you won't miss any future uploads, because there's so much more coming your way. Red heart, hit that subscribe button now, and let's keep spreading kindness and positivity together. Thank you so much for being here. It truly means everything.